Hi, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. My name is David Feldman-Makrias, and today what I want to talk about is putting together a proposed client budget. But I want to show you how we simplify it. So let's just get right into it, as we normally do. Right to a spreadsheet. Oh, yeah. Okay, so spreadsheet time. I wanted to go over this because I felt like it was pretty important, especially in the digital marketing landscape when things are, the service based industry for advertising, especially digital. It really is, the nomenclature is all crazy. There's only a certain amount of services you can sell, but the way different agencies and different vendors title things can be very confusing depending upon the industry. And I think one of the most important things that we should take note of is education, right? Education. How do we stay educated? So, with this, I wanted to show you what I recently received from a potential client. Now, granted, I want to put some context. We've already made contact with this potential client. We've had multiple meetings, multiple conversation touch points. We've identified exactly what they're looking to do. Always throughout all of our conversations, money is a factor. Let me repeat that. Money is always a factor. However, you know, knowing where to allocate those dollars is important, but understanding exactly what they're getting and what their main goals and motives are is extremely important as well. So, what we're looking at right now is a breakdown of advertising and digital marketing services, really digital online presence services for a specific potential client. I can't give away what the name of the company is. I can't really even give them what vertical it is. For us, it's going to be lead driven. They are within that ideal range of $5 million to $100 million in annual revenue, and their marketing overall efforts, are equivalent to that. It's in perspective, and that's the ideal type of client that we're looking to get, right? Because, and I've talked about this in other videos too. You want a client that's not that is big enough to spend a certain amount of money every month on advertising, or a certain amount of money every month on specific, whatever service you're providing, but not too big where you have to go through all these layers to get to them, right? So, without further ado, let's dive into what I'm talking about. So it was a simple PDF that the client sent, and it was a PDF line item breakdown of all their services, and we needed to understand exactly what is happening so we can make an accurate proposal. So what I do for current proposed client budgets, it's a little bit different for each client depending upon the industry. What I like to do, and this is tip number one. Tip number one is make, and I'll put some notes here. Make your budgeting in something they can understand. Excuse me. Tips. I'll say put your budgeting proposal in context they can understand. Big deal here. So many companies I see don't do this, especially when it gets more nitty gritty, depending upon, sorry guys, when it gets more nitty gritty, depending upon how many services are involved and the complexity of the organization, it makes the most amount of sense to put it in a format that they are comfortable with. So, literally, when this person sent me the PDF of everything, instead of using our own template and using whatever, I just uploaded all of their breakout in a spreadsheet because I want them to understand that we are there for them. And just doing this little thing rather than creating this whole big PDF and writing out each explanation and all this stuff, this little bitty itty thing of contextualizing it to something that they are familiar with looking at is so, so important. So literally, I copied every single line. I have the service on the first column header, the spend, even the column names are the row names are the same. Well, that'd be column names, whatever, cell names. They're all the same. Spend and advertising reimbursement. So this is the service they do, what they spend, and this spend is per month. as an example, but it could be a full calendar year. I actually think it's personally better to be per month because things are changing so much. How can you know what your budget's going to be? It's so crazy. You can estimate all you want, but COVID put a wrench through that. Anyways, I digress. And then advertising reimbursement. So, advertising reimbursement in this specific scenario is certain clients you may deal with depending upon how big they get. They may be franchises, and franchises could get incentives back from their original OEM, let's say original equipment manufacturer, and they would get reimbursed for specific advertising rules. And this, in instance, for this client, it was actually a key component of how we budgeted things. However, I'm not going to go into that totally. I just want to show and reference this. The number one tip: put your budgeting proposal in context that the potential client can understand. That way, they can immediately look at it and then they are familiar, right? So that's first. And then you want to go to their playing field, you want to level it out, and you want to understand the breakout, right? Excuse me. So then what I did, it's pretty simple. What I did, I took their exact template and then just added another subset of columns for our recommendations. And then also what I did was I added some additional total lines, right? Because it's pretty important to understand. But before I go into this, let me go back and explain. Services like PPC, so that's a monthly PPC service, monthly SEO service, a social media service. These third party, anything third party here, that has to do with other third party providers that are a part of the marketing budget that aren't necessarily under our control, but they're other vendors basically. Web maintenance, that's another service that they enlist in. And again, third party tool number two. So these are just examples. You could swap it out with what have you. If you're advertising or you're operating a web industry or e-commerce space industry, you're going to have costs not just associated with advertising, but you're going to have your website. You're going to have any tools that go with your website. You're going to have third-party plugins. You're going to have additional things that are in the digital realm that may be focusing on marketing and advertising, right? So that's what all those third-party items are for. So now, even though our services are not directly related to all the ones listed, some of them are. So let me explain what I did. What I did is I broke it out even further. Now, instead of just the spend and advertising reimbursement, I have another whole set of columns for recommendation and projected advertising reimbursement. This column set here actually refers to what we recommend. And I want the client to be able to see side by side exactly what's happening now, which is columns B and C, and then what we recommend and why, only for the numbers, okay? We got to make it as simple as possible. So I'm going to include that as a tip on the next sheet. Make it as simple as possible. When you start including too many, put an S in there. When you start including too many frames of reference and too many different components in your spreadsheets, it becomes really overwhelming. So make it as simple as possible. So again, I have the same line item list of services. I've added in total columns so they could see the difference, because a big part of this particular example was the advertising reimbursement. They want to get as much advertising reimbursement as possible, so that was necessary to evaluate that. Another item I did was, see these different colors here? This is brown and this is green. A couple of these these cells are green. These services refer to, the services that we're going to handle and how they differ. So you can see a full comprehensive view all at once. You can also see a side-by-side comparison of what we'd be taking over and what we recommend and why. And you can see it all on one sheet, and it's so valuable. So when I go down each line item, and I'm not going to list off all of these numbers because the numbers are basically arbitrary, but the items that we control are limited, right? We do PPC, we do SEO, and we do social media. along with some website and web maintenance plugins. So our services only apply to those 5 line items, but I still want to show their entire marketing budget on one sheet so that way they can understand what's exactly happening, right? And the color combination or the color coordination allows them to easily differentiate what I'm doing now and what the recommendation is. So adding these total and spend columns is important too because it's important too because um, let's see the difference, right? Because the advertising reimbursement and spend is a little bit different and they're not exactly even. That's why I made this column, which is actually a difference between your spend and advertising reimbursements, and then you have the total amount that you'd be paying that the client in this situation would be paying us. So that way they can see every single line item breakout all on one sheet, and it's real nice and simple. So of course, you can make formulas for this. These are just basic sums and subtractions. Excuse me. But a few tips to kind of recap us that we learned from this. And going back to that first sheet, let's bring the tips over. Nope, don't want to do that. Let's do it like this. So the tips here: put your budgeting proposal in context they can understand. Make it as simple as possible. And really, this is in with colors, formatting, totals, line items. So, oh, the formatting's killing me. So you want to make it as simple as possible. Everything is labeled the same, which would be the line items. We talked about the colors. We talked about the formatting. Notice something here too. I added, excuse me, grid lines to make it a little more easily digestible on what to look at for the totals and what to look at for the top. And it's something that is easily identifiable and quick to understand. That is key. You want to make it as simple as possible and utilize the context that they're already familiar with. Most people are familiar with spreadsheets. Then, if you see a sample in something in a spreadsheet, put it in a spreadsheet. Make sure all the line items are the same, so on and so forth. So, I hope this gives some valuable information because this did help us win business today. And analyzing not only each line item but having an appropriate recommendation with the totals is a big deal. Now, you may ask, how did we get to these recommendations? Why is this one $2,000 more a month than this one? Or why is this line item, third party website, $300 or $250? Is it three? Yeah, $250, whatever the dollars is, $250 less per month than the current program. Well, if you want to know a little bit more about actually coming up with recommendations and making those assumptions to do it the right way, drop a comment below. It might be something I talk about in the future. But propose a client budget simplified. Hopefully, this helps you with getting more business and getting more clients. And I'll see you in the next video. Take care.